Stand by. I will introduce you to senior consultant.
Yeah.
সবাইকে আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি ভোট আলাপ 2026-এর এই ঘন্টার আয়োজনে। আমরা আজকে আমাদের সাথে এই অংশের আয়োজনে আছেন একজন আন্তর্জাতিক নির্বাচন পর্যবেক্ষক। তার সাথে আমরা কথা বলবো এবং আমি নাহিদ হোসেন আপনাকে আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি। আমার সাথে আছেন মিস্টার থমাস কিন, সিনিয়র কনসালটেন্ট বাংলাদেশ অ্যান্ড মিয়ানমার ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ক্রাইসিস গ্রুপ। মিস্টার কিন, ওয়েলকাম টু মাই শো.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
You have certainly observed the election yesterday. What was your primary observation regarding, the overall scenario, the law and order, the expression of voters and the political leaders?
Yeah, I think the overwhelming thing that I took away was the atmosphere and the mood of people who were voting. I spoke to many voters yesterday, and they all expressed this joy at having the opportunity to vote. And the festival-like atmosphere. I was in one polling station. It was a college, and it had a field in the middle. And after people voted, they were just staying on the field, like talking to each other, and the security was saying, "Come on, time to leave." And they just wanted to hang out. I mean, everyone commented it was kind of like an Eid festival atmosphere. So I thought it was really nice. And people seemed quite positive, optimistic as well, which was nice to see. And so, yeah, it was a really kind of special experience for me, a privilege, to kind of be here for this election, I think. And it all seemed to go very smoothly. I mean, of course, there's been some isolated kind of incidents that have been reported, and it's important that those are, that they are reported and they're investigated and so on. But I think overall, it seemed like the election went very smoothly from a security point of view, and also sort of in the management of the election, what happens in the polling stations and with the vote counting and so on.
How did you observe the election commission, how they acted? Did they actually able to be neutral to manage the overall scenario?
Yeah, it's a difficult question for me to answer. My sense is that there were some complaints about the election commission from the parties, but overall, that there was a fairly high level of confidence that this would be a credible election, going into the vote. And I think the way that it unfolded yesterday, I think that, that has come to pass. I mean, as I said, there have been some complaints, but I think, if we look at elections in the past in Bangladesh, I think this was, a significant improvement. We might be able to say this is kind of the benchmark that future elections should be measured against. But, going back to those complaints that are there, I think what's really important is that they're investigated transparently, and kind of handled in line with the law, right? So we do know what the outcome of the election is. It's a clear, victory for the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. But still, we shouldn't just simply ignore some of the complaints that have come up, because they may have some merit, right? And part of the process is making sure that those complaints are investigated and handled in line with the law.
But still, the amount of complaints, don't you think so? It was very nominal scale, according to if you calculate the past electoral violence history of Bangladesh.
Absolutely. I think the number of complaints was relatively small. We are talking about a country with 127 million eligible voters. So, looked at in that context, I don't think anyone's suggesting that this affected the outcome of the election. It, may not have affected the outcome of any of the seats. There were some close, quite a number of close results. And so, a few thousand here or there could change the outcome. But I don't think anyone is really suggesting that, that those complaints that have come up are, as serious as like they would have a significant effect on the overall seat distribution in the parliament. Yeah.
What are the parameters or indicators? You are certainly International Crisis Group is going to publish a report or on the election, or you have already published.
So International Crisis Group is not actually an election monitoring group. We don't do like the technical observation. I was here to research the environment. We've been reporting on Bangladesh politics for many years. And I think what we're looking at more, and what I was, gathering information for, is to look at what are the challenges for the next government, rather than, was this a credible election according to sort of international standards. I mean, my observation is that they seem to be very credible. And I think we can see that from the high turnout as well. I mean, I think 60% turnout is quite good given some of the dynamics in the election, with a lot of registered voters being overseas, a lot of voters also not being able to return to their home constituencies, and as we know, also some Awami League supporters would have chosen not to vote, which is their right. And so I think the turnout level gives us a certain amount of confidence that the people of Bangladesh saw this as a credible election. And certainly the people I spoke to, they weren't voting out of obligation. They didn't feel pressured to vote. I mean, they were doing it because they wanted to. I mean, they were excited to vote. So they had a high degree of confidence that this was a credible election.
But according to your observations, what are the basic challenges of the next elected government? I mean, it has already been elected. They will take oath shortly.
Yeah.
They will go to the parliament. What are the primary challenges, and on what grounds they have to prioritize?
It's a great question. I think we would have a very long list. But I think, the economy is going to be it's very important for any government in Bangladesh. And I think, maybe one of the kind of, at least internationally, one of the overlooked aspects of the July uprising against Sheikh Hasina was the economic situation of the country prior to that. The economy had been in a very poor state, post-COVID. And I don't think there was any confidence from people that Sheikh Hasina's government could take the country forward economically. There was a lot of corruption, obviously. So I think that, combined with the political repression, which we're all very aware of, was an important factor in the downfall of her government. So I think for the incoming BNP government, they're going to have to attract more investment and create more jobs. I think the interim government did a pretty good job of managing macroeconomic stability. I mean, we can all see the exchange rate is stable, the foreign currency reserves are up, inflation is still high, but it's not as high as it was. Food prices are not too bad, I think. I mean, according to most people that I speak to. But it hasn't been able to attract investment and create jobs. And I think that is going to be incredibly important, because if you don't have jobs, I mean, you're not meeting the aspirations of the people of Bangladesh. And particularly as a country with a large working age population, a young population, you have to create the jobs. If there aren't jobs, then people aren't going to be satisfied with their government. But that's going to be very difficult, because there is a kind of constrained environment for the next government. The interest rate repayments on its debt are increasing. The banking sector is still not in a very good position. So that's going to be a huge challenge. I think also the law and order situation's been a common complaint that you regularly hear in Bangladesh. I think there's my sense is that people have a bit more confidence that an elected government would be in a better position to manage, security and law and order. But, they have to make it happen, right? They have to rebuild confidence in the police force. And aside from that, I mean, international relations is going to be a challenge. There's opportunities there. I mean, I think we can see that, the big countries around the world are very interested in Bangladesh, China, the US, and of course India. and that kind of competition can be of benefit. You can take advantage of it if you can manage your international relations in a careful way. But the important thing is not moving too close to any one particular country, I think.
But don't you think so? It's in nowadays when international politics or the foreign relations with one country to another, there is a polarization in world order. So will it be tough for Bangladesh to be in this polarized situation, but to maintain good relationship with all the countries we need?
Yeah, it is going to be difficult to maintain the balance. I mean, we can see that from the agreement that was signed with the United States recently, and some of the points in that agreement that try to limit Bangladesh's ability to have economic or military relations with certain countries that the US doesn't have a good relationship with. So it's a bit of a tightrope to walk in this global kind of geopolitical climate, I think. So that's why I say it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. I mean, if you can manage it well, you can sort of benefit. You can play countries off against each other. You can benefit from their efforts to try to gain leverage. Sorry, you can get leverage from their desire to have influence in Bangladesh. So, but the BNP government is going to have a very kind of skilled and experienced foreign minister and team around them, I think, to take advantage of that opportunity. So yeah, I mean, I see that as quite a significant challenge.
BNP is going to the parliament with absolute majority, but there are around 70 seats from Jamaat Islami. There was a hype for the last 2 or 3 weeks at least that Jamaat is going to have the power. That didn't happen. BNP is going to form the government with absolute majority, but still, what I have told, Jamaat is there with around 70 seats. How will you evaluate these dynamics of results?
I think there was a lot of hype, but we didn't have a lot of, I think, solid data to go on. So we're always, I think, kind of guessing a little bit and trying to, we're sort of assessing the mood. And there was this mood, particularly in Dhaka, I think, where Jamaat did do quite well. That they were on the march, and that they could potentially have won the election. But I think, there were a couple of things that were working against Jamaat as well. If we look at the 73 seats that they gave to their alliance partners, I don't think that the alliance partners won many of those. So that's a big head start to give to the BNP. There are also parts of the country where Jamaat is very strong, but there are parts of the country where it's not very strong at all. And so maybe we didn't factor that enough into our analysis or our predictions about how the election would unfold.
But I'm pretty sure you have talked with many people, especially female voters or female um, domain of society. How they expressed to you regarding Jamaat Islami, since Jamaat Islami have expressed many things which made some controversy over the social media and the society also.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very polarized. That you will find women voters who feel uncomfortable or threatened by the idea of Jamaat coming to power. But also, I spoke to many women who said that safety was an important issue for them, and they were voting for Jamaat because they felt like it would create an environment that would make them feel safe. So it's a very, that's like you looking looking at the same party from like completely different perspectives, right? So that's why I say it's quite polarized. But I think maybe the traditionally the major parties, Awami League and BNP. I mean, maybe they might reflect on that. Like, what is it that what are the reasons why some women are gravitating towards Jamaat? What are we failing to deliver to them? I think your question before about why didn't Jamaat do as well as as maybe some people thought. There's a seat count, And yes, BNP has an overwhelming majority, but I think we should maybe reserve our judgment a little bit until we can see the vote distribution, um, because there were a lot of close seats that Jamaat lost, and also it won some, that were quite close. So I think that will give us a sort of a clearer picture of how well Jamaat did or how well it didn't do. So I would wait for that before sort of making a definitive judgment on whether they underperformed or not. I mean, we are talking about a party that had not won more than 18 seats previously, never got more than, I think, 12% of the vote. And so they have, significantly outperformed any of their previous, election results.
What's your stake or comment on the referendum? People were interested on the referendum. I mean, since you have talked with people, what was their expressions?
Yeah, this is something that I've been trying to think about today, because when I was speaking to people yesterday in Dhaka, uh, everyone I spoke to emphatically said they were going to vote yes. Like, they almost looked at me like, "Why are you asking this question?" Of course, I'm voting yes. Um, and so I think there were a range of reasons for that. I mean, some people, they just seen the campaigns from the interim government, from some of the political parties, um, and just hadn't really, maybe not necessarily looked at what they were voting for, but they trusted their political leaders, and so they voted yes. And others, I think, when I talked to them, they had a better understanding of what the July Charter was or is.
But what were you found with talking to the people, that were they well understood what the referendum is all about?
I think it was a mix. It was a mix. Some people didn't have a great idea about it, and some people had a very good understanding of what the July Charter is, what the contents is, why it's important, or why they felt it was important. They could explain. I mean, they would say, like, well, we need these reforms, like X, Y, Z, to prevent another Sheikh Hasina from coming to power or something like that, right? As an example. But what I found interesting was looking at the yes no vote. And I know we don't have final figures, but it looks like the yes vote might be sort of high 60s, something like that, maybe as high as 70%. But as I said yesterday, my little survey was 100% yes. So I was thinking, well, where's the 30% that voted no come from? Who are they, and what are their concerns? And I can't say for sure, but I mean, I have been reading some articles today where they pointed out, like, areas where the Awami League was traditionally strong. There was a higher no vote, the Chittagong Hill Tracks, for example, and also some parts of Chittagong, where it seems like some local BNP leaders might have encouraged a no vote despite the leadership having eventually endorsed the yes vote. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics there. But I think high 60s or 70% yes vote is a strong message that people support these reforms and support their implementation.
What's your comment on the law and order situation? Because in the last around 18 months after the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, there was a criticism that police is not functioning yet. And today I have talked many of experts. They were categorically saying that army acted very well yesterday, and that's the one of the basic reason the election was free and fair and peaceful. But army is not going to stay in road for long days. They have their own work. If police is not functioning, then what will be the law and order situation next? So will it be should it be one of the prioritized fact or ground for the next elected government?
Absolutely. I mean, I think along with the economy, the law and order situation is something that could really, um, undermine support for the BNP government if it's not handled properly. This is something that affects people in their everyday lives. If they don't feel safe, they're not going to be happy, right? I mean, I think they expect their government to provide a certain environment that they can live in where they feel safe. And this is not unique to Bangladesh. Everyone wants that, right? So, as you correctly pointed out, the army is not going to be on the streets forever. I suspect they're very eager to get off the streets, and we're quite happy that the election has been completed, and it seems like there'll be an elected government in a few days, so they can, go back to the barracks and get back to their normal work. And that means that, yes, the next government is going to have to rebuild the confidence of the police force and rebuild people's trust in the police force, because that should be the body that is primarily, doing the day-to-day work of keeping people safe. So I think it's right up there with the economy as one of the main challenges for the BNP.
Last but not the least, you were an expert of ICG on Bangladesh and Myanmar. What about the Rohingya crisis? How the next elected government is going to deal, and how they should deal this fact? Because after 2017, after the big influx of Rohingyas, it's been a burden for Bangladesh. The fund is being in a declining curve, and of course, it is a security concern also. So repatriation was a highly used words which we have not seen yet.
Absolutely. It's, one of the top foreign policy challenges for the next government, but it's also a domestic issue as well. It's not just a foreign relations issue. Um, you know, I think Bangladesh opened its arms to the Rohingya people in 2017 when they needed sanctuary. But I think a lot of people didn't expect that, this crisis would take so long to resolve. Um, and and so showing some signs of progress, I think, will be important. But also, unfortunately, it is very much dependent on what happens in Myanmar. And I think it was a positive sign that the BNP leader Tariq Rahman said, the Rohingya are allowed to stay as long as they can't go back to Myanmar safely, because there's a temptation, I think, when you get frustrated at a situation like this, to try to really encourage the Rohingya to go back. But if the situation isn't safe, if they're not secure, we've seen in the past that there's a high likelihood that they will end up in Bangladesh again, because let's remember, this is the third major sort of refugee crisis that Bangladesh has had to deal with. There was one in the late 70s and also the early 90s as well. So the solution, as I see it, is to create an environment in northern Rakhine State where the Rohingya can go back safely. If we look at the current situation in Myanmar, that area is controlled by a non-state actor, the Arakan Army. And my analysis is the Arakan Army is not going anywhere. It's not going to be defeated by the Myanmar military. And so I think, although it is very difficult to work with a non-state actor, Bangladesh will have to pursue that under the next government and try to build trust with the Arakan Army, which unfortunately hasn't been there over the past 18 months. And also try to rebuild the relations between the Rohingya community and the Rakhine community in Rakhine State.
But being a state, communication with a non-state actor, don't you think so? Myanmar military junta, the NAPIDO will take it negatively.
I can see the logic there, but Myanmar has many non-state actors. Literally dozens and dozens of non-state armed groups. And it's quite common for neighboring countries to engage with those armed groups. Every country takes a different approach. China has a formalized relationship with armed groups along its border. It meets with them regularly, in Kunming. Thailand also engages with the non-state actors along its border. Some of them go back and forth across the border. And India as well, which traditionally, at least for the past few decades, had stayed away from engaging non-state actors in Myanmar and only engaged with NAPIDO. But over the past few years, it's also recalibrated, and it is engaging with the Arakan Army, with Chin ethnic armed groups as well. And so I think that Bangladesh could look at how other countries go about this, because it's not the only one facing this kind of challenge of how to have build a relationship with a non-state actor. You can learn from other countries, and every context is different. So it doesn't mean like you can look at China and just go, oh, we'll copy what they're doing. That will work here. That's not how it works. But I think take some lessons from other countries and try to find a way that works for Bangladesh.
But without bringing peace inside Myanmar, is it really possible to repatriate all the Rohingyas? And I see all the friendly nations, including the United Nations, they constantly say Bangladesh to receive even more Rohingyas. In the last 18 months, United Nations requested Bangladesh several times to take some more Rohingyas, but Bangladesh categorically denied, though it's entering. But no one is telling Myanmar to get their people back to their motherland.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your point, but it's kind of difficult to see how you could get people to go back voluntarily and safely to a place that's in the middle of a war. I mean, the Myanmar military is bombing northern Rakhine State regularly. I don't think that it's a safe environment for people to go back to. So I agree with with what you're saying, that maybe there could be more pressure put on the Myanmar military, but it's not the only actor here, right? And I think what we can see from the past is that putting pressure on the Myanmar military doesn't always work anyway. And so, I don't think there are any easy solutions here. I mean, unfortunately, it's going to take, all sides kind of trying to work together to end the conflict in Myanmar, to create the environment, in northern Rakhine that Rohingya can go back to. Because I think one thing we shouldn't forget is, and this is the positive part, is that the Rohingya still do want to go back. Even though it's been almost 10 years, they're not thinking, oh, I hope we can stay in Bangladesh, or, I hope I can get a Bangladesh ID card so I can live here forever. They're very much focused on going back. So I think that's positive. And if the right conditions can be created, I have no doubt they will take that opportunity. I mean, when I was in the refugee camps most recently, I really remember talking to a woman. She was about 80 years old, and she said to me when I asked this question, my husband died in my village in northern Rakhine. The only thing in my life that I want to do is go back there so I can die there too. So that's the kind of feeling that people have. Like, they see that area as their homeland, and they have a deep connection to it, and they want to go back. So, if the right conditions can be created, then they certainly will.
So, what will be your suggestions to the next elected government to deal this entire fact, to for making it happen, the repatriation of the Rohingyas, and bring peace in the region?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because there are also potential spillover effects, not only in the context of Rohingya, but this is a conflict that is also along the border with the Chittagong Hill Tracts. So it needs to be managed carefully by Bangladesh, and it is a security concern as well. It's not just a humanitarian crisis. But I think, as I said, I mean, I don't see how you can avoid engaging at some level with a non-state actor, the Arakan Army, to try to, to move the situation forward. At the moment, we're quite far from the Rohingya being able to go back. And I think, when you're frustrated, I think there's a tendency to try to look for quick solutions. Unfortunately, I don't think there'll be a quick solution. But, trying to create a situation where when the conflict in Myanmar changes, because it's not a static conflict, it's a dynamic conflict, and there will be changes in the future that will create opportunities for repatriation, I believe. So try to make sure that you're doing what you can to support that. So one example would be to try to improve the trust level between the Rohingya community and the Rakhine community and the Arakan Army. You can do that, and the conditions might not be right for repatriation, but it means when the conditions are right, the process will be able to move faster. So I think there are things that can be done in the meantime.
We also hope that new elected government will work on this. Thomas Kane, thank you so much for giving your valuable time here in my show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
ভোট আলাপে কথা বলছিলাম ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ক্রাইসিস গ্রুপের সিনিয়র কনসালটেন্ট বাংলাদেশ এবং মিয়ানমারের মিস্টার থমাস কিনের সাথে। তিনি রোহিঙ্গা নিয়ে খুব সুস্পষ্টভাবেই বললেন যে এই রোহিঙ্গা ক্রাইসিস সমাধান করার জন্য পরবর্তী নির্বাচিত সরকারকে, অর্থাৎ নতুন নির্বাচিত সরকারকে খুব সুনির্দিষ্টভাবেই চিন্তাভাবনা করে এগোতে হবে। আমরা পরবর্তী ঘন্টার আমন্ত্রণ জানিয়ে এইবারের অংশটি শেষ করছি এখানেই। ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে সাথে থাকার জন্য।